Joining me now is Leah Oliveira and Mary Angel, co-founders of Blindsided Studios, working in film and content creation. Welcome to Room with a View.
Thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No worries. I guess to kick it off, would you both like to tell us about what you do?
So this is Mary talking. I guess like both of us kind of do a bit of everything in terms of the previous projects that we've done, but at the moment I've been recently doing a lot of film editing and taking still photography generally, and then doing like a bit of like social media stuff. That's generally what my role is in it. Yeah. Leah?
Hi, Leah. I'd say Mary does more of the like creative side, I feel like. I do like editing and like planning, but I do a lot of...
I feel like you're like...
stuff.
Also, it can bounce off like my conceptual ideas,
Yeah,
and I'll be like, I need you to confirm.
She'll say something, I'll be like, okay, that's my idea. No, but, otherwise I do editing like every now and then, but I do a lot of planning, I feel like.
Yeah, Leah's like Leah will fill in all the extra things that I can't do, so she's more of an all-rounder. And we'll just like anything that needs to be done that I'm not working on, Leah will like
I'll pick it up,
take control of.
Yeah, awesome. I guess who/what are your biggest inspirations when it comes to filmmaking?
I don't know if I have like specific people. Leah will probably mention this, but I know one of her inspirations is Louis Theroux.
Yeah, we love him.
I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but I do like the style, like kind of like a casual approach to it, rather than like you look at like a lot of nature documentaries and things like that, because what we like to do is more non-fiction documentary based content, rather than taking like a scientific like narrative style. He's more like immersive in what he's covering. I don't have necessarily a single like person, but there's a documentary about Studio Ghibli called The Kingdom of Dreams and Madness that like personally I'm heavily inspired by, just how they can cover the straightforward reality of the content that they're making, plus also convey different ideas that is not necessarily inherently attached to what they're covering. Leah?
I don't know what to say after that. Yeah, so as Mary mentioned, I love Louis Theroux. I like his style of interviewing. Like, I guess the production side of it is like nice, but it's pretty like straightforward. They don't do like any crazy cuts or visual editing, but I like his interview style and the kind of way he kind of breaks down barriers with people that otherwise you don't really know or they're not easy to understand. And yeah, same. Like I have a lot of different influences, but I really like Ai Weiwei's documentaries. Yeah, Human Flow is like one of my favourite documentaries, even though it's pretty recent, but like that kind of, he like did like, this is like a serious issue, but also he did it in such a creative way that it really makes people immersed in it and not just like, oh, it's a documentary that I can scroll past on Facebook.
So how did you two meet, and then from there, like how did Blindsided kind of come to be?
We haven't discussed
this.
Confirmed. Okay, Leah, you can go first.
I feel like, so we were in the same studio, the Sci-Fi. No, we didn't. No, not Sci-Fi.
Witness.
Sorry, Witness, yes.
How could you
And
forget?
it was early days. We didn't even talk on the early days when we did.
I don't remember you being at class.
We did
the
introductions.
first few weeks.
I remember you there, but I wasn't like, oh, I need to get to know her. I'm joking, but so like, and then we were a few classes in. Like, it was up to the point where we were like, what idea should we do? And then we were on the same table, so we started talking to each other. And then, it just went from there. But I don't know, what else?
I first remember we had to do like presentations and stuff for the class, and I think I remember you vaguely around like the first like 4 weeks of class, because I'm pretty sure you didn't come to the first one, but if you say against that, that's fine. But I think we were just like sitting at a table together with like a few other people, and I think I noticed like you dress really cool.
Oh my God, I'll cry.
I was just like, a lot of other people seemed, I'm not sure if they already knew each other or not, but like after we had like a first table discussion, I was like, oh, this person seems to have like similar like ideas and interests to me. And then so when we had to create a group for our final project, I was like, Leah, I'm in your group now.
Yeah, we were very like not 0 to 100, but like we were kind of like we didn't talk for the first few weeks, and then as soon as we spoke, we're like, let's just sit next to each other. Let's just do this. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
So that's how. And then how did the studio come about? That's the back end of the question.
I think because we did our first class project, so we were both in first year, and we were doing like our first major project, which became pretty successful for what you'd consider like someone's first uni project. We entered it in a few film festival, like our documentary into a few film festivals, and then we just kind of maintained contact through working on that project. And then we ended up in the same class the next semester as well, and again working on the same film project. After we'd worked with each other a few times, we kind of realised that we worked well together, and that why not take this like a step further into a more like professional situation. Yeah, I think we were editing some project that fell through, and at the time that we were like feeling really unmotivated, so we're just like trying to find something to motivate us. So we're just like, we should make our own production company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That film you didn't make like as a part of Blindsided, but you did make it together for Witness, one of the good ones, which is multi-award winning, soon to be on SBS On Demand.
Yeah, Melbourne only.
But yeah, can you tell us a bit about that film and how like how you've been finding the response to it?
It was weird. Not weird, it was crazy because we were doing the, planning like early days, and we were really excited about it, and we still were like while we were editing it, but like by the editing stage, we kind of just had enough. Like, not had enough with the like project itself, but like nothing was turning out the way we wanted it to, and so it's one of those things where you're like, we were doing our best because of the subject matter, but otherwise we were like, what does this even mean?
Yeah, so just like to people listening, what we made was a short, like 5-minute short documentary that was interview based, called One of the Good Ones, that was kind of exploring the experiences of people growing up in Australia as people of colour, where society is mostly dominated by people who are white. And then when you think of someone who is Australian, you think of someone who's white, and then how their identity as a result was impacted by that story kind of being replayed, like, Australians are white, like, you're not. How does that fall into how you identify with yourself? So we interviewed 2 people. One of them was born in Sudan but moved to Melbourne, born in South Sudan and moved to Melbourne fairly early in his life and grew up a majority of his life here. And then the other person we interviewed was born in Australia but to Filipino immigrants. And then basically the documentary was just exploring how they kind of negotiate their sense of belonging in Australia. I should have said that.
No, that's good.
As Leah was saying, I'm sure everyone who does any kind of creative work, you kind of begin to like hate it by the end of it, because you're just looking at it over and over, like not looking at anything else for like weeks or months on end. But I think once we got to the final piece, we were pretty happy with it, because we were fairly unhappy with how some aspects of it turned out. We worked pretty hard to get it to what it is. We entered it in the Victorian Multicultural Film Festival, and we won the Judges Award. So like as a result of that, now it's going to be soon on SBS and On Demand, which is kind of like something that you're doing your first uni project and you don't be like, oh, this is going to be on SBS in like a year's time.
I would say it's interesting because like I have my work community, and it's weird because like you go to uni and you usually have like-minded people around you, and then I'd go back to like Werribee, and Werribee is weird because it's really multicultural, but like there's a lot of old-fashioned ideas of like racism, stuff like that. Anyways, and my workplace was kind of like, oh, what's this? Like, what happened? And I remember my boss watched it, and he was like, oh, I was crying. Like, I'd never seen it that way. And I was like, first of all, like, of course you didn't see it that way. But at the same time, I was like, this is the kind of reason I wanted this kind of thing to exist. And also my main priority always was like the people in it. And my friend Chang, who was born in South Sudan, he was like so grateful to me, which was ridiculous, but that kind of like was very emotional for me because I was like, this is like my friend who deserves a lot. And he's like kind of the main stage on that, so yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of films are you hoping to make through Blindsided Studios? Will it be like similar to one of the good ones, or?
I think it'll be like fairly similar content. Like both of us are very interested in storytelling, as most people, if you're doing media, you kind of have to be interested in storytelling because that's what it is. But I think we're especially interested in how being able to communicate different stories from different perspectives in order to like bridge differences in society and kind of encourage empathy between different groups of people. So one of the good ones, the content I think was definitely aligning with what we want to do with that.
Making media that kind of reflects social values but also kind of gives a voice to certain issues and in a way that doesn't try to be like, well, we're the ones shining the light on it. It's just like we have stories to tell that we can assist in.
Yeah, trying to be like honest with the stories rather than like over exaggerating what they are just to get like clickbait views or whatever, but also not taking out like the details that people maybe don't want to like ignore. That people do want to ignore. So just kind of like showing, like trying to be honest in the content as well. I think with our, like the name Blindsided is like we were kind of feeling a bit like overwhelmed by like a lot of aspects of society that like when you leave high school and you go into whether uni, like some job or other kind of aspects of adult life, you do get blindsided by a lot of different issues. And as like a young person, we're trying to negotiate like our place, as well as we watch like the people around us try and negotiate their place and their values in like a society like what we live in now. So yeah, that's kind of where our name came from, and then kind of reflecting what we want to make as well.
Yeah, awesome. I guess to wrap it up, what do you see as the pros and cons of being a student-run film studio?
I think one of the biggest ones that we've like, because we only really decided to do this in the last like few months, probably around like August or so, I think. And I think it's difficult because we are students, so we do have a lot of other priorities. So we don't necessarily have the most time and resources as well. So I definitely think that we've found it difficult kind of not wanting to overwhelm ourselves with doing too much work. Yeah, Leah?
No, yeah, I would say the same. And it's not really pressure because we're only telling ourselves, but even just thinking like, what do you want to make underneath that name, I guess. It's just like you want to, there's a lot of pressure. I mean, not pressure, but yeah, because we have expectations of ourselves. We think like, you know, we want it to be something that, I don't know, gets people's attention, but at the same time, you don't want to really force that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think something else that, kind of going off that is that we are like still students, so we're still learning at the same time, yet the media that we consume is like obviously super professional, and so anything that we make that isn't like reflective of having like a heap like money to spend and like super professional, heaps of people helping, like a massive production, and then we look at what we make, and then usually it's just the two of us or like maybe a few extra people like creating something. So I think not to compare ourselves against people who aren't students and do have more resources than us. Yeah, is awesome. Another struggle. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else you want to add?
I don't know. Do you have something to add?
I don't think so. I think no. We have Instagram, so we just opened up an Instagram account, which is Blindsided Studios. No fuss, just those.
No fuss.
Just those two words.
No fuss.
Easy. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Room with a View.
Thank you.